And you get all of our awesome updates whenever we go live about more Core Web Vitals stuff or any other exciting topic. Adam, Nils, if you haven't watched our webinars before, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Sure. Okay, my name's Adam. So you've probably seen me in a few of the last webinars. I'm the head of SEO at Woorank, and yeah, I'm surprisingly, I am not myself bored of Core Web Vitals yet, because things are just starting to get really exciting. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned and learn something today.
Very exciting.
Yeah, for me, I'm Nils. I am the co-founder of Woorank and the CTO, so the one with the technical hat. Obviously, very interesting topic for me, because Core Web Vitals is where, marketing and tech side of companies, people who are running websites, really meet each other, and where we really need to work closely together to get a good user experience, which is a responsibility that both technical people and marketing people carry. So very excited for this. Well, it's already a long time coming, but for Core Web Vitals and how Google is going to make changes and take these metrics into account.
We have people from all around the world already tuning in. So Joanna, hi. Cabin Tea Brewer, I think I finally got your name right. You're always watching our webinars, but I always struggle with your username. So hi. Jesper, hi, hello. Jesper's been with Woorank since the beginning. Vu Tours, Tourism from Dubai, ooh, hello. Holz Photography, looking forward to watching the stream. Based in Barcelona. Not half as tan as Nils, though.
That's good lighting. That's good lighting.
Yeah,
it's raining out here in Belgium, so
DMD Solutions already throwing some shade. So yeah, on that note, it looks like we already have a pretty healthy audience here. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So first and foremost, I think, just to get everyone on the same page, why don't we have a little bit of a recap of what Core Web Vitals are, what Google is looking for, what we're kind of going to be talking about today. Nils, do you want to go ahead and explain?
Sure. If you can throw my screen up. Oh, I'm not even sharing. There we...
Oh, wow. It's hailing in Dublin. Sorry about that. Okay, we've got...
There we go. Okay. Yep. So Core Web Vitals, I think last webinar, I mentioned this website over and over, and I will keep doing that because this is really the hosted, managed by Google, but one of the best resources, in my humble opinion, when it comes to lots of stuff in terms of web development and how to optimize websites. But in context of our webinar today, Core Web Vitals, there's lots of resources, lots of blog posts, both technical, more higher level, etc. So great resource. This is their, let's say, main article about Core Web Vitals. So in a brief nutshell, there's about seven, I guess, metrics that Google that browsers are tracking when it comes to user experience, and 3 of those have been sort of picked by Google as being the ones they're really interested in and gonna look at when they rank your website. So obviously it's not only about this. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of factors that influence your position, the position of your website on certain keywords. They have stated that Core Web Vitals will be or will become one of them. Initially was slated for May of this year, but I think they recently announced in a blog post that they'll be pushing it to mid-June and then roll it out over the next couple of months. So by end of August, I think, their new algorithm, or the algorithm taking this into account, will be entirely rolled out. That's the current schedule as it stands. So Core Web Vitals, 3 important vitals or metrics they took out of that list of 7. First one being largest contentful paint, metric expressed in seconds. So taking, let's say the biggest biggest item on your web page can be, typically will be a video or a large image, and how long it takes that item, the largest item on your website to load. Ideally, Google says it should be below 2.5 seconds. If it's below 4 seconds, it needs improvement, and anything above, it's not good. So that's really, then you'll score poorly, big red flag. Second core web vital, first input delay. Where largest contentful paint is related to the load speed. The first input delay looks more at interactivity. So how long does it take for your web page to allow a user to click, or when a user clicks, actually something happens. That's the first input delay metric. And then lastly, and this would say, my opinion, is a very important one. That's the cumulative layout shift. This is not expressed in time, but it's just actually a percentage value. And this will show you, or this will tell you something about how stable. So it's all about stability, visual stability, how stable a web page is. Are certain images or just blocks of content suddenly popping out of nowhere, pushing text down. So people are clicking around, clicking on the wrong things because something slides in. That's a cumulative layout shift. We have, we're publishing after the webinar a big blog article about it, because the reason I say I think it's one of the most important ones is I think this is one where you really have full control over what's happening. If you decide to put like 100 ads on your website that suddenly jump in, that's something you have full control over. Timings is always a bit more, you have people all around the world coming to your website, having different types of connections, from fast, slow, different devices. So you still have control, of course, by using CDNs and improving your JavaScript, your CSS, and all of that good stuff. But cumulative layout shift is really like when you look at the layout of your page and the things that will pop in, that's where you have control and can say, okay, I don't want this to jump around. I'll take this out, I improve this. So that's why I put a lot of emphasis on that one specifically, because that's one that you can start working on today, and start thinking about, okay, do I need to change something in the layout of my web pages? And then very quickly, because obviously these are all a bunch of numbers and they all have a meaning, of course, but how can you get a view on your website and how your website is doing on all of these metrics? First resource to me is the Pagespeed Insights website, also hosted by Google, of course. As an example here, I took Wikipedia, the English Wikipedia homepage. So as you can see, and this is also we highlighted in previous webinars, they make a clear distinction between field data and lab data. As a quick recap, field data is how users across the internet are in the field, literally almost, how those users are perceiving your website. So it will take into account people with slow connections, with fast connections, mobile, desktop, you name it. This takes data out of the field and how many users are interacting with your website. Whereas, and if we go to the bottom over here, lab data is more of a controlled environment. So you run it on your browser, a Lighthouse report on your browser, or in this case, Pagespeed Insights run from probably a server on Google's network. So it's more of the type of data that you can use to improve certain things. Look at the numbers not as the holy grail, but look at the numbers as a starting point. when it says a given number, for instance, first contentful paint is 2.3 seconds, start making your improvements, rerun the report again. If it goes down, good, you made a good improvement. If it goes up, you probably made a mistake and need to roll back. So difference between lab and field data. So this is a great tool to have a look at and to run your website or web pages through. Small side note about the field data. This is based on Google's Crux dashboard, and we'll get to that also later in the webinar when we start looking at websites of some of our users. So Google keeps a huge database of data of websites around the internet and users going to those websites. And then they keep all of that anonymized data in a big database. And if you want to have a look at that data, it's available here in the Pagespeed Insights data. There's also databases and Google Data Studios that you can get that data out of. Again, we'll show that in a second. Downside of this data, of this field data that Google publicly makes available, is that not all websites are in there. So that's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. Smaller websites, newer websites typically don't have enough data in that data set for them to then show you these nice graphs. A good example is one of our new products or newest product lines is Data Bravo, so databravo.com. Quite new website. There's no field data, as you can see over here, just yet. So it's a bit of a shame, but anyway, it is what it is. We cannot do much about it other than trying to grow this website, make sure it has more visitors, so it keeps feeding Google's data set, and eventually we'll get more visibility, hopefully from their field data as soon as it gets surfaced by Google. So very quickly, still here, like I said earlier, there's number of metrics that are being tracked, of course. And in this specific tool, Pagespeed Insights, the core web vitals are always highlighted by this blue ribbon thingy. So that's one interesting thing to know. In the lab data, you see only 2. Where it should be 3, you might say. But one metric they're not showing in lab data is the first input delay, because given lab data is run in a controlled environment, like a browser or a simulation, there's no actual user clicking around and using your website. So that's why there's no first input delay. There's no user actually clicking on something. It's just a report that's being run. So the advice or the best practice is to focus, in that case, on the total blocking time, which kind of is a proxy towards the first input delay metric. So when you're working with lab data and you want to improve your first input delay metric, then total blocking time is the right proxy metric to look at. So that's a little side note, but an important one, I guess. So that you cover all the bases, all the 3 metrics. Was there anything else to show? This is actually pulled from our article that we'll launch or publish right after the webinar. Cumulative layout shift, really important one. And like there are 4 main cases, I guess, that you can highlight where this score will get an impact. Images, always make sure they have a width and a height. When you pull in third-party resources like iframes, ads, other types of embedded blocks, also make sure they have dimensions, because a third party can start wiggling around with the information they show in that embed. So always make sure it has a restricted width and height, so other elements on your website won't get impacted. Dynamically injected content, bit of a high level kind of thing, but when you're inputting boxes or blocks of text or newsletter subscription boxes here and there, always make sure you're not harming your users' experience by doing that, so that when they click somewhere, suddenly something pops up and it gets very confusing. And then last one is web fonts loading. The article will deep dive into that. So sometimes, fonts still, while a page is loading, fonts are still showing like a default, and then suddenly the web font comes in and it changes the fonts on the website. That also might have an impact. If the default font is larger or smaller than the actual font you wanted to load, things will also start jumping around, having a huge impact on your CLS score. And then, again, pulling all of this from our article, but this is what bad layout shift looks like. So you have your page and then suddenly things start popping in. Ideally, the most ideal scenario is making sure that by either setting widths and heights or by providing placeholders, that you have this type of experience. Things are not jumping around, but slower things just come in later without pushing parts of your page up or down, left or right. All right. I talked a lot, so I'll leave it at this for the recap.
That's the longest I haven't talked in my entire life. All right. Moving right along. So with everything that Nils has just explained, as you might have guessed, we're actually implementing some stuff into Woorank to help you stay on the right course and make sure that you're actually fixing these things or aware of these things on your website. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen just to show you what we already have in Woorank. So share. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this should be familiar to all of you. If it's not, woorank.com, free trial, 14 days. So this is your homepage review. Right now I'm reviewing one of my buddy sites, Huckle the Barber. If you need a quarantine cut in London, this guy's great. So this site performs really well, but we are now looking at these Google Core Web Vitals. So what we've actually implemented in our review, this is a brand new criteria that we have. If we just jump down to the performance section, hopefully, there we go. So now we have an informational crit. You'll recognize it by the gray arrow. So this is informational right now. It's not going to impact your score one way or another. You just should be aware of the elements on your website that are actually impacting the CLS score that Nils just explained. So we actually show the elements that are contributing to that CLS score on your website. So you can see your total CLS score. If you need more information, you can see here that this is what it is. Basically, everything that Nils just explained, this is how we calculate it. And we also have our cumulative layout shift guide, which is going to explain a little bit more because in terms of technical stuff, I'm sure you understand this is a little bit more technical than looking for a meta description or making sure you have a Facebook page. So we do have this kind of educational content, which I'll dip into a little bit more a little bit later. And then, of course, as Nils also mentioned, we have a very huge article that I'm going to publish right after the webinar that's going to explain even in more depth about what contributes to this, how we calculate, or not we, but how Google calculates something like this, and also how you can fix these things. Also in the pipeline, I'm going to let Nils take control back of the screen so that you can see the other thing that we're doing to help you get squared away for Core Web Vitals.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. So yeah, I'm logged in as a Woorank user. I am a happy Woorank user myself. This is a website I kind of run in my free time. It's a climbing gym I often go to. I help them with their website. So yeah, as you've probably already seen in the past couple of weeks, we launched our Woorank Assistant. Yeah, won't go in too much detail because we already did that a lot, I think. But our assistant, just basically a simple piece of JavaScript that you put in the head section of your website. And then when I go to set website, you'll see that at the very bottom here, we give you this nice little toolbar that shows you information on on your website. So you don't have to leave your website anymore, specifically about the page you're on. So are well-known reports, of course, and the things that need improvement or that are just plain wrong. Some information about traffic coming from Google Analytics mostly, about speed. But today we have something in beta, so it won't be available to anyone just yet. So yeah, don't send emails to support just yet if you don't see the Web Vitals button over here. But we'll, I think, add it to the description later of the video or in the article. You can just reach out to us and we can give you access to this thing over here. Still a little rough around the edges because we're working on it. But basically what happens by also having the assistant code installed on your website, we are pulling in Core Web Vital data from the visitors on your website. And then we'll be able to show you information or show you the actual data page by page on how users are perceiving your website. So this is actually the field data that Google does or does not provide, because when you have a newer or smaller website, often you won't find the data in their big Crux data set. We'll pull it in for, even if you have just one visitor on your website, we'll keep pulling the data in. And we'll show you dashboards, show you what's good, what's not good, how to improve things. Just by installing the assistant, everything will happen out of the box. So no need to do anything else. So yeah, stay tuned. This will be launched and improved on in the next couple of weeks. And if you want to be pulled into the beta product, so might still be some bugs lying around, but just let us know and we'll pull you in and tell you how to enable the beta flag. And so this is really exciting. I think actual field data, usually very interesting for ongoing monitoring lab data to make some changes, but then you want to see over the next couple of days, weeks, months, how things are going. And this is exactly why we built this little thing. So that's it for now.
Okay, and as I mentioned before, so we do have a lot of educational content. I'm not going to share my screen because I'd just be showing you blog posts, and that's not that visually interesting. But I will post all of the links that we have so far in the comments so that you guys can check it out after the webinar. You know, definitely want you to stay focused right now because we're about to get to the good part. But after the webinar, we already have an existing Cumulative Layout Shift, say that 5 times fast, article already on our blog. We also have one about largest contentful paint, and we will be publishing in the next week or so about first input delay. So all of these kind of just getting you situated and understanding a little bit in more depth about what it is that they're looking for. We also have a Core Web Vitals kind of evolution article. So like, how did we get here? What have been the major algorithm shifts in the past that have made us reach this point of Core Web Vitals? And I mean, on our blog, we're going to be just continually posting more information about that. So even if you don't click the links that I post in the comments, you can always just go to Woorank's blog, and everything new and exciting and informative will be right there waiting for you. You don't even have to be a paying subscriber, but I suggest that you become a paying subscriber. All right, now the moment that everyone has been waiting for. Did we choose your site to live review? Did we choose it? Let's find out. So Adam, it's your time to shine. You have not been speaking this entire webinar. So now we're going to let Adam take the mic here. So did we choose your site? Are we going to review your site? So right now, just to catch everyone up, if you didn't see our emails, we're actually going to be looking at a few of your actual sites to see if you're ready for a Core Web Vitals update. And before everyone starts getting angry and sending me mean emails, we are only reviewing people who volunteered for this. We didn't just pick at random. So Adam, take it away. Okay,
thanks for that. And I just saw in the comments too, we have executive retreats from Port Douglas, Australia. So that's my neck of the woods. So g'day guys up there. Good to see the team logging in tonight. So yeah, the first website that we picked to look at tonight is, and I do apologize if I say it incorrectly, but it is visitnordsjaelland. Now I'm just going to share my screen. And then you guys can see it. Okay. So
I
visit.
don't see. Oh, there it is. There it is. Hold on. Okay.
Cool. Beautiful. All right. So yeah, let me know in the comments if I totally mashed that up. But visit Nordsjaelland is what I'm going with. So this is one of the websites we picked, and for a number of reasons, a lot of great submissions came through. But really, we were looking for something where we could it had enough data to show you that meant something. But actually, we also picked one that didn't have much data on purpose. For the exact opposite reason, so we could show you what to do if you have a website that doesn't have a lot of data showing up in Search Console. So this is the first one we'll be looking at. Niels, did you want to go over the Crux dashboard first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Courtney, if you can loop me in here. So yeah, this is what I mentioned earlier, the Google Crux dashboard. So it's their big data set of basically millions of websites and how users are perceiving those websites and all the Web Vital data and the core Web Vital data. You can actually access it yourself by going to g.co and then Chrome UX Dash. We'll put the link in the description, obviously. And then you'll be forwarded to Google Data Studio. And then you can, Google is a little slow today. There we go. And then you can enter your website or a competitor's website or any website that you're interested in. So let's take https://wikipedia.org, connect. And whoops, that's not correct. So like this, that's going to be better. Connect that. And then it will create a dashboard for you. I'll stop sharing this one. So this is for the website that we're reviewing currently. And they can have their website data showing over here. The largest contentful paint that we talked about. And you'll see changes throughout history. So that's since June 2020. So when you made changes, it's really interesting to see how things are evolving. So yeah, that's it.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so what I want to do is basically show you guys how to do two things. One, let's find out from Search Console some information about what's happening with the website. Check that your scores are okay and that you're essentially passing them, and if you're not passing them, what to do. And we'll also take a look at the WooRank system itself for this same website, and just we're going to really cross-reference a lot of the information we're getting from both sources. So let's dive into Search Console first. So this is for that same website. Visit nordsjaelland.dk. So when you first log in, you're going to get the overview page, and we went over this in a previous webinar. So first thing I'd be doing is clicking down on page experience, and this is where you're going to start seeing if you have a lot of data available that can be reviewed, or not so much data. And it's going to change a lot. It'll change over time. It'll also, if you've only just set up Google Search Console, give it at least 24, 48 hours to sort of pick up the data and start showing you. But this is a very sort of, I think, typical sort of traffic site. You can see that it's given 3 ticks down here on usability, security, HTTPS. But what we're interested in is the core Web Vitals, which apparently has some failing URLs. So if we just click that, and we're just going to go to that menu item there. Again, and this is really important, Niels mentioned it earlier, but it's kind of a score over time. So as we look at this, we can just see that over time, the problems have either been getting better or poorer, and that's a big element, because if you do start making changes to your website using like Woorank and some of the other tools, you'll want to actually start seeing that dip down. Obviously, when we look at like need improvement, you can see sometimes there's pages and then they go away. Sometimes there's issues, then they go away. So this is a really great graph just to look at quickly. Let's sort of dive into what it's telling us. A lot of people will just look at the poor. I do advise that you look at everything. You know, even if it's just over 2.5 seconds, Google is apparently going to be, somewhat penalizing your website or affecting their ranking score based on that. So really, it's the fastest that we can get this score, the better. So ideally, it might be impossible to have all good, but the more we can get from the poor list over into the improvement and then over to the good list, the better. So if we take this site, I can actually click on the issue that is cropped up as being the biggest, and that is CLS. And it's going to be, I think, the number one issue out of the Core Web Vitals going forward for a lot of conversations, because of what was mentioned before. You have full control over this element. It's really hard to affect some of the other things, but what appears on your page, on your content, is essentially entirely up to you. So I'm going to click on this status one, poor. There's about 1,000 URLs on this website that are being classified as taking more than, well, having a score, sorry, as above 0.25. So if we go in, we're going to again see, we're just drilling down. So it's a little bit like Google Analytics. If you click on a menu item, you start drilling down into the traffic to see just that information. So what we're presented here is these are the example URLs, and sometimes you'll get more, sometimes you'll get less. This will often don't expect to see every page from your website. This is just essentially showing you a handful of examples. Sometimes there is a lot showing there. But what we can do with this is actually go and have a look at one of the pages that are having this problem. So this one has, I was going to look for a higher score, but no, yeah, well, let's just go to this one, because I'm hoping we can get one that's like noticeably. So I'm just going to click it, open it up. Okay, let's see if anything's snapping around. Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, that was pretty clear. So let me just turn off Tag Assistant there, popping up. So as you can see, when that loads, there's a shift. Like it starts, and it's everything like that gold bar literally was at the top of the page. If we refresh it, gold bar's at the top of the page, it's moving lower, it's gone. So that's a good example, just like in sort of real world terms, of what Google's getting at. And the reason they don't like that, it really is the same reason that you or I wouldn't like that. It's when you load a page, not only do we want to interact with it, but I went to try and click on something that I saw in the footer in that example, but then by the time it's loaded, I've accidentally clicked on this image instead. So that kind of behavior Google sees as, it wants to kind of stamp out. It wants you to say, well, I'd rather you have a blank space here, and then these images load in just a few 100 milliseconds later, than to push the content down in that fashion. So that's a good example. And I'll just load up another one just to see if we can get a lower score, a lower negative score, but still.
Adam, maybe I just want to add something to that thing,
Yep.
or to that page in particular, because indeed, that was a very clear example of that layout shift going down. Now, there's actually, I wouldn't call it an easy fix, but there is a fix for that by for instance, using placeholder images. So they already fill in the space where an image should come, because typically images load slower. They have more, obviously, there's more to download. So I think if you go to the YouTube homepage, they do it pretty well. Like you see a bunch of gray boxes, and then like fake text, or just like a line in gray. I think that would be a somewhat easier fix for this particular page, to just already replace the images, or make sure there's placeholders underneath the images, so that even when they're still loading, they won't push things down. And maybe, Courtney, if you can really quickly jump to my screen, That's also something you often see, or I've often seen when looking at a multitude of websites. At the bottom here, there's the cumulative layout shift, like the summary of all of it. Often you see that score varying very like quite harshly from between desktop and phone. So cumulative layout shift is also one of those metrics that has even a higher impact on a phone, because when things start jumping around, your phone screen is only so small. So when things take a jump on the phone screen, it's even the effect of that and the impact of that is even harsher than on a desktop. So it's really also interesting and important to take into account. This is how people see it on a desktop, but also on a mobile, the effect and the user experience might be a lot different still, and have an even more negative impact.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, and a really prime example of that is if you run google.com through their own Pagespeed Insights tool, you'll actually see that exact effect where mobile we're scoring a 73. So come on, Google, surely you can do better than that. But look at the CLS. Okay, so we've had a lot more fails. We've had 3% of fails, 4% of to improves, 93% good. If we go to desktop, all of a sudden Google is scoring 100%. We all know that the Google homepage loads up really, really snappy. But on a mobile phone, we have to take into consideration all the different types of devices out there, different speeds. If you're out in the bush or you're out of the city, you're not going to be getting 4G or 5G. You're going to be getting a lot lower speed. So this is why you will see that typically you have a worse score on the on the mobile compared to the desktop. So okay.
We actually did a question about that in the comments.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys had a chance to read that, but Dutch for Beginners, as I said, or she said, he said, I use Squarespace to manage my websites. Google always says that my website is slow on mobile, but okay on desktop. What would you suggest to improve the vitals with managed systems? So Dutch for Beginners, let us know in the comments if what we just went over kind of answered your question a little bit, just about the different devices, and if not, we can handle that at the end. But yeah, great examples you guys showed.
Yeah, and I think that the short or the easy answer to that is firstly looking at cumulative layout shift, because again, that's where you have the full control over how you want to show things on your website and have things appear on your website. The other two, when you're hosting on Squarespace, of course, you're a bit limited in what you can do to improve certain things in the code in JavaScript and CSS, for instance. So that's something probably for a follow-up review of us then, because there's no silver bullet to fix that, of course. But I'd start at the layout shift first to make sure that isn't my website jumping too much? That's a great start. Like that's a best practice, and then build onto the next ones from there.
Yeah, and don't feel too bad if you do get a slightly low score, because, like I said, I like to make fun of it, but Google get a sort of orange score themselves. So we're not doing too bad if you're getting about that or certainly higher. But let's jump into this website's review inside Woorank. I'm just going to load up the homepage. And I'm just going to, so again, we've been over this report a bunch of times. I'm just going to jump straight down to the performance section. And as you can see, this is the same information we showed you before example, but this is now specifically to this website. So to the Visit Nordsjaelland. I'm just going to stop saying it. Apologies, I'm really messing that up. So we're looking at the CLS issues. Now, the best way to handle this, because you might look at that and go, okay, so I don't understand it. The best way to try and understand this is look at each element that we're bringing up, that we're showing you on the report. These are the biggest contributors to what's affecting your CLS score and making it so poor. So one thing you can do, and this really depends on if you're managing your website yourself, but you may recognize some of these elements that are listed. If you've had your website built for you, you probably won't recognize them as easier. So you might better speak to your web designer and have them sort of just like let you know what that element it is, and then they can fix it. But so we can actually see that this top element here, which is part of the page wrap, and we actually saw that in real life. There's part of the page wrap that has a major shift, and that is essentially, if I go back and reload it, you've got that page wrap, and then boom, it just literally expands out, and then it loads up these probably fairly high resolution images into the page. So that's the sort of thing that will definitely trigger an error. Now, it's even happening on the homepage, but it's not as noticeable. I'm just going to go to it. Oops. Okay, so the homepage is a lot better than that particular page, but you can, hopefully that still comes across in YouTube, but there is that little snap. So reload, and there's that little snap with the banner and the page wrap expanding. So really, these are sorts of things that you could tidy up in conjunction with your web designer, your web programmer. If you're using, WordPress or one of these hosted solutions like Squarespace, then you can certainly just check the things that we've mentioned, which is this picture, which I love. Check if you're specifying the height, the width, and all the dimensions of the images for one, making sure that anything that you've put into the code yourself, that you are doing that. If you've drag and dropped an image from an editor into WordPress, don't just like let it set its own size. Actually specify the size. I want this web image to be 600 pixels wide by 400 high. So that's a nice square. That kind of little extra effort from you guys is going to make all the difference and really sort of help you get this score. Well, in this case, we want this score to be really low so that you're not failing it. So this, and of course, we'll be adding to this over time. If we go back to Search Console, we've looked at the difference between mobile and desktop on page experience, but I just want to show you that you get the two graphs here too. So again, for mobile, over time, and usually it's a reverse. So just like we're seeing, so over time, we've had a fairly consistent run of poor URLs. However, on the desktop, those poor URLs are mostly classified as need improvement, but lo and behold, we've actually got some good URLs. So it's not all bad news. I like to leave the good news for the end. So actually, since April 10, we've actually started been recording on this website some good URLs. So URLs that are behaving properly. And again, we can click into that and it's listing the homepage as an example. And when you saw, there was a major difference between the little snap of the homepage versus the other page that we were loading up earlier. So you can sort of relate this to real life, workings on your website. Try not to think about it all as these weird numbers that Google's coming up with. CLS is all about but the snappiness of a website. Does content shift around? And if it does, it's not good. So that's kind of that website in a nutshell. The last thing I want to touch on though is, let's say that we've spoken to our web guy and we've given him a hard time, not too hard a time, and we've asked him to try and fix some of these issues for us. He does. We should then validate these errors. Now, let's just go to mobile. So once you're looking at a series of issues and you believe you've fixed them, you can come in and actually click the validate button. So that'll then signal to Google that you've paid it some attention, you've listened, you've gone and tried to improve the pages. It'll then place these pages into a queue to be retested. Some people say and I agree, you don't have to click the validate fix. If you fix it, Google will come and it will find these pages eventually, but this just, in theory, pushes you to the top of the queue. So I always feel good when I push that button, because I also get an email letting me know that it is being reviewed. And then at the end of the review process, I should get another follow-up email letting me know how it went. So then you can come back and revisit it. And hopefully what we see is that these bars go down over time. So that's it. Look, that's how you use Search Console and really Woorank to dig in and start fixing these CLS issues.
Awesome. We actually did have a question in the comments, and I love when you guys try to work out the answer for yourself in the comments. It makes me so happy. But DMD Solutions wanted to know, but when you specify the size, so going back a few minutes, when you specify the size, isn't that making it less responsive? WordPress is supposed to handle that it fits all screens properly.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. Maybe you can put it on the screen, Courtney. But it isn't. These days, well, HTML has changed a lot. And actually, when we do the next review, I'll show you exactly the answer to that question. But width and height setting actually tells your browser, okay, this is the ratio of that image. So it doesn't have to guess, which makes it so that if you watch on a desktop versus a mobile, it knows exactly, okay, I need to shrink it down this much, etc. So, and then there's improvements to serving responsive images, so smaller images for smaller screens. But setting width and height is really a best practice. Again, we'll get into an actual example later on. And your follow-up comment is, yeah, WordPress is supposed to handle that. Correct. WordPress should have certain things that work out of the box if you use their media library, and make sure you don't always use the full width image, or whatever it says on that button. But WordPress has some out of the box tools and buttons to help you do that properly.
Great. Okay, let me take that off of the screen. Also, Adam, if you're interested, our friend Jesper gave us a phonetic pronunciation in the comments of his website. It's Visit Nordsjaelland, basically, sort of like New Zealand.
So, Visit Nordsjaelland. Okay.
We were way off. Anyway, so moving on to the next website that we have chosen to review today. So Nils is going to take the wheel for this one. And this is coming from our friend at albm.ca. Since it's a photography website, I'm assuming that it's pronounced album.ca. So I'm going to go ahead and add your screen to the stream, Nils.
All right. So yeah, I'll just pronounce it album.ca just to make things go smoother. So for this website, yeah, it's an example of a site that doesn't have field data yet, so no data in the Crux database. Yeah, that it is what it is. So the Visit Nordsjaelland website did have data. That's also why it shows up in Google Search Console, because Search Console pulls from that same data set. This website doesn't. Yeah, unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is. So we'll have to work with what we have, and that's the lab data. So also on Pagespeed Insights, yeah, nothing you have to install, just a tool you can use and run on the internet in a browser. And I've run the website through, and of course, yeah, Google gives it a score. Again, it's a lab score, so it's yeah, don't fret too much on the actual number. Just look at the number as a baseline and then improve from there. And then, yeah, to highlight the earlier question of image sizes, it's indeed one of the points they make in the report over here to make sure, well, there's a couple of improvements you can do for images, like use specific type of formats, defer off-screen images, so images that are way down below on your web page that won't fit in the first fold. It's probably better to not load them just yet, but only when a user starts scrolling. But then properly sized images, really important one. I think one of the easier things you can do if you want to make changes and want to make improvements, probably one of the first ones you can have a look at. to make sure that everything is properly sized, that you serve responsive images. And the good thing about the Pagespeed Insights tool is that it recognizes certain CMSs. So WordPress definitely is one in that list, and gives you CMS-specific information and actionable tips. So for instance, here, upload your images in the media library, do it so and so. So really, yeah, that's the answer to the question earlier. Just have a look at Pagespeed Insights, and it will tell you what to do if you have a recognized CMS. There's obviously more information that they pull you to through then. So how to properly size images, use responsive images, etc., etc. So yeah. Not going to deep dive into this because that probably takes me a couple of hours on spending on images alone. But I think images is the low-hanging fruit when you want to improve, well, any of the core web vitals, but specifically layout shift, and also the loading times, which will probably be improved by other things like deferring and using the right formats and then right encoding. So definitely one to look at. What else? Some simpler things, although here they're less impactful. I think you often see huge JavaScript files or JavaScript files that aren't used anymore. Like you use the tool ones that asked you to install certain pieces of JavaScript. You don't do that anymore. Like always make sure to clean those things out, minify them, stuff like that. So it's a little more technical, but also really important. Anyway, there's so much you can do on a website to improve things, but if I had to pick one to start, I would say images is really a good one, because that's easy to grasp even if you're not too technical, whereas JavaScript and CSS is already something you probably need someone with a technical background to help you with, or when you're in a Squarespace world, it's not always like you don't always have the full control over what you do with JavaScript and CSS. So yeah, there's that. So there's this tool, of course. And then another one I'd like to use, and people might say, oh, this is a very technical way of looking at things, but still, even as a non-technical person, I think there's some value in using just the developer console in Google Chrome, for instance. Firefox has something similar, because this will also allow you to from your desktop load a website as it were to be a mobile phone, an iPhone X in this case. So when looking at this website specifically, you'll see certain things in action. So the cumulative layout shift score, I can't recall correctly, but it's quite high. Should be a lot lower to be ideal. And you see that happening on the page. So the good thing this website is doing is having this placeholder and loader. So it's not the entire image that suddenly pushes everything down. But as you saw, and it's probably interesting to have a look at, and I don't know if my mouse is super visual, but there's a way to throttle or to use this tool and throttle over here on the top. I hope people can see that. And then you can, it's not showing on the stream, but then it shows you a drop down and you can switch your connection or fake a slow connection. So it gives you the option to have a fast 3G, a slow 3G. So I'll go for a slow 3G. And then you really get a view on how people with a slow connection will perceive your website. So that's especially when it comes down to things like cumulative layout shift. You see, like there's even the loader is still loading. Very meta. But you see things jumping around, and this is really also that font shift. I think we'll see that happening in a couple of seconds. So this is now showing the web page in a default font. As soon as maybe I should have gone for a little faster connection, because this is really faking a slow connection. Anyway, yeah, taking longer than I expected. But as you'll see, this might someone with a slow connection. Maybe it's not your core audience. Like certain people with slow connections. Generally for some types of industries, you might just have people that are local to you, and you have fast connections, and they will have too. So that's a possibility, of course. But this is a great little tool in your tool belt to debug your website. Let me just increase the connection a little bit more and do this all over again. See if we get some other input. Yeah. Pagespeed Insights, great tool, gives you lots of information and actionable feedback. And just your average browser has this built-in developer tab, or developer console under the network tab. You can fiddle around with network connections and seeing how people perceive your website, switch between desktop view and mobile view. So this is really a great tool in your tool belt.
Great. We did have a question in the comments from Kevin Teely Brewer. So they said that they have a problem with asset minification, etc., as reported by our Woorank reports. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but is don't know how to say this, Autoptimize a good plugin? I have never heard of that before in my life, but is that a good plugin for asset minification? Do you guys know for WordPress site?
It's really hard to point out the really solid performing plugins that work again and again on all the websites, especially WordPress. I have heard of Autoptimize, even I'm having trouble saying that. It's not one that I've seen in use a lot. I tend to see other names, when I'm going through different people's WordPress websites. But what I would suggest is that a plugin only be sort of, part of your solution. That's going to do some of the work, but also looking at, and we've mentioned this in other webinars, looking at a CDN network to help as well. It's more you can do for that, the better. So yeah, auto optimize. That's actually the proper way to say it. Thank you. Auto optimize. Look, put it, install it, test it, and then go back and look at the score. That's how you're going to know if it's working for your particular website. Good enough.
Cool. That's all we wanted to show for the websites, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So guys, throw some questions into the comments because we're going to be sticking around for a couple more minutes here. So if you have any questions about what we talked about today, what we've seen, or just, any questions you want to pick our brains about just in general, go ahead and throw them in the comments so we can address them. A few other things to note. So we talked about the Core Web Vitals update kind of getting pushed back. Something to really stress, that doesn't mean you should wait to fix this stuff until Google's going to pay attention to it. This is actually a godsend. You have a couple more weeks, a couple more months to actually fix this stuff before it becomes a ranking factor. So being granted that extra time is really useful and very beneficial for you to be able to make these fixes in time. And also just, what we hammer on about all the time, it's not just about how Google is looking at your site. This is for your users. You want it to be a good experience for your users every time they come to your site. So if you have a problem with CLS, which is the big boy, the one we've been talking about all day, fix it now, because it's not just about Google, it's about your users and how they're interacting with your site and if they're having a good time. And I know probably everybody who's watching can commiserate with, how annoying it is when you try to click something and then it disappears or it gets pushed down. That's not a good experience for your users to have. So you have extra time to fix it. So go ahead and do it. No questions are coming in. So I'm gonna quickly share my screen here to give you a little teaser of what we're going to be doing next month. All right, so You may have noticed in your Woorank report that there are a few new criteria. If you didn't notice, WOORANK.com, sign up, free trial, 2 weeks. So if you go down to the accessibility section, this is a brand new section that we've just added to the Woorank report. There are a few different metrics going to be adding to this as well. I don't want to give too much away right now, so maybe Nils can just give a brief overview, and this is actually what we're going to be talking about in next month's webinar, so you can get situated with that. So really what we're looking at is the contrast, so like the font contrast colors, making sure that people can actually read what's on your site, and then navigation stuff. This doesn't mean do you have a table of contents on your site. This is, you know, how usable and accessible your site is for people who are on different types of computers or using different browsers. So in the first 2 weeks of May, we don't have a date just yet because we're very busy and important people. But we're going to, in the first 2 weeks of May, where Nils and I are going to be doing a technical assessment. I say Nils and I'm just going to be here. Nils is going to do a technical assessment of what accessibility means, what it actually is that we're looking for, what sort of things can impact this, how you can fix it. And then at the end of the month, Adam and I are going to be talking about the practical application. So how you can use tools like Woorank to find and fix these issues, and also what this means for your users if you have problems with this, these different criteria. Did I miss anything? I think that's pretty much awesome. Okay, nobody has any questions. Joanna from DMD says, thanks for the great content. We're going to work on these issues and get back to Woorank for the checkups. That's what we like to hear, Joanna. Thanks.
Perfect.
All right, so you know me. I'm gonna go ahead and ask for likes and subscribes. Please like our channel, subscribe to our channel, like the video. You will get updates on if we're going live or if we have new content that we put out, because it's not always a live thing. Sometimes we just upload videos. So very, very important for you to hit like and subscribe. Comments. I love chatting with you guys when Nils and Adam are talking. So definitely the comments are very helpful. And all of the stuff that we referenced, all of the links that we referenced, we're gonna go ahead and put in the comments after the video is done, so that you can actually take your time and read about more of these things. Last minute question, 11th hour from Mark Doherty. In Search Console, mobile data is going from green to orange normally on a 2-day turnaround. What could be the cause of this?
I think it's just, it might be flirting with the threshold that Google sets to go between green and orange. Not specified what the metric is, but let's say for largest contentful paint, 2.5 is the green to orange mark. Like if you're flirting with that 2.5 mark, it might constantly jump around. Or you might. That's another thing. Like you'll be able to reference that in the Crux dashboard. Some days you might have a certain type of visitors from a certain type of connection or area or whatever that are a little slower. I don't know. Like there's so many possibilities why this might be happening, but it's another thing to take into account. Like Google Search Console often doesn't show you really or doesn't show you a lot of information about actual connections. They kind of flatten it all out, but that might be something that's happening. If, let's say, some of your scores are dropping, it's like, oh, my site is getting slower. No, maybe you'll start having, like you opened up to a certain region or type of people who typically have slower connections or slower devices or whatever. That might also be an underlying case. It's not always your website that is the culprit. It might just be a new group of people that you're attracting and that typically have slower connections. So very important. I'll quickly show if you can so connection distribution and device distribution are part of this report. So here you see that over time for this website, it's the first one we reviewed, that they started attracting more mobile. So that's the blue. No, sorry, more desktop visitors since summer of last year. I don't know if that makes sense to them, but that's the reality of it. So this might be a cause. Same for connections, although in this very case, it's pretty consistent, like 97, 98% on fast connections. But it might show otherwise. Maybe you attracted a lot of 3G connections suddenly in the last month. That might also be a cause. So really taking everything into account. And again, with our assistant and putting on all the data, we'll be working on surfacing this information, because it's not available in Google Search Console, which is a bit of a shame in my opinion. So yeah, then we'll take that job over from Google and make sure you have all the tools and all the data you need to make these decisions and conclusions.
Great. So no more questions left. I know if we didn't choose your site to review, you might be disappointed, but look out for an email from me. If you're not currently a Woorank subscriber, look out for an email from me. I have emailed most of you. I think at this point, there might be a few stragglers. Check your spam folder, but I have emailed you just to entice you with a little Woorank present. So that's it for us today. And yeah, look out for an email also from the team for our next webinar in the second week of May. That's it.
And visit North Zealand.
Yes, and visit North Zealand. All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching and staying engaged and asking questions, and we'll see you again next month.